You are listening to the Bat Flip Podcast, a baseball podcast from Belly Up Sports and the Belly Up Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Damian and Matt.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Bat Flip Podcast. My name is Damian here with my co-host Matt, coming to you on April 19th of 2022. Got basically a week and a half into the baseball season so far, so we got an extension that happened today. A star player starting a rehab assignment, some unfortunate injury news, and then a couple other little interesting tidbits later on, and then we'll finish up with our players of the week like normal. But before we get into all of that, how are you doing, Matt?
Doing good. I've had a pretty good week, and it's everything's going well. So ready to talk about some baseball tonight.
Yeah, let's just go ahead and jump right into it, and we'll start with the extension that happened actually today as we were recording this. Kyle Freeland signed a 5-year, $64.5 million extension that does have a 6th-year option. Now, it's not clear if that's a mutual option or if there's an incentive to a player option, but some sort of a 6th-year option.
Yeah, this is a kind of interesting deal. This is a guy who it's kind of weird because he had that really good 2018 where he had a sub-3 ERA pitching in Coors, which was insane. His peripherals didn't quite back up the ERA, but they were still really good. Mid threes expected numbers, and I mean he was a really solid pitcher in 2018. But since then, it's really not been that great. 2019 he was atrocious, and he's also dealt with a lot of injury issues. He hadn't pitched more than 120 innings since that 202 inning output in 2018. So this is a guy who has some talent. He's obviously showed it before. And, the last couple of years, he's been a low fours ERA type of guy, and I think that's kind of who he is, a low to mid fours ERA. Paying him $11 million a year is, it's a little sketchy, but, in Colorado, a low fours ERA is pretty solid. So we'll see what happens here. He's a guy who definitely can get the ball on the ground a pretty good bit, and he doesn't strike out a ton of guys. If he can get those walks back down some, maybe a little bit more, get a little bit better control going, I think he could be a pretty solid piece for that price. But this is kind of a borderline. I'm kind of borderline on whether I like this deal or not. But Colorado extends a pitcher, and kudos to them for spending money and trying to invest in pitching as well as as best as they can, because it's really hard to do that in Colorado.
Yeah, it is an interesting deal, like you said. It's probably a little bit of an overpay at the moment, but you kind of have to do that to get a guy to stay in Colorado. Now they have, with this deal, they've locked up the top 3 in their rotation. You've signed German Marquez to a 5-year extension. I think just this last year you signed Antonio Senzatella to a 5-year extension, and now you've signed Kyle Freeland to a 5-year extension. And you basically had failed to do that with John Gray, but they were trying to do that before this last offseason. So, he's a guy who on the road has a career like 3.96 ERA, so he's obviously a little bit better, about a 4.5 at Coors. He was a guy I always thought if he was able to get out of Coors, he'd be able to probably develop a curveball, because he's more of just a fastball slider guy. Would be able to develop a curveball more and be better, but you can't really do that in Colorado because curveballs don't break as well there. So maybe he can help develop a changeup later on, but it's a little bit of an overpay. But Freeland, he's a solid pitcher, solid back of the rotation guy, and if it doesn't work out, maybe somebody will take a flyer on him because it's not too expensive of a deal if another team wants to jump on it a couple years down the road. So not too bad of a deal, but it will be one to see interesting if he can improve to make it look like a better deal for the Rockies at least. But let's go ahead and jump over to your Atlanta Braves, actually, and with their superstar Ronald Acuna actually starting a rehab assignment tonight in AAA.
Yeah, this is very exciting for me. I love Ronald Acuna Jr. He's fantastic for the game of baseball. He's an exciting player. He's one of the best players in the game. And getting him back is a gigantic deal, not only for the Braves, but for the game of baseball in general. And, he's starting his rehab assignment. He's played, he got 3 plate appearances tonight, and he played, played 5 innings, played outfield, and that's fantastic. And everything went pretty well. He went 1 for 3 with a double that was off the top of the wall, and he also flew out to deep center and hit a rocket ground ball right at somebody. So he's hitting the ball hard already. He's ready to hit. I think he probably could have hit. Could be DHing at the big leagues already right now, but they wanted him to get some work in the outfield before they bring him back up. So we'll see how much time they take to do that. My assumption is he probably comes up a little bit sooner than the first week of May that they had kind of talked about. Maybe even for the homestand that starts on Friday. Maybe the second half of that homestand, they could possibly bring him up. But he looks good. He looks healthy. I know that they're going to want to build up his stamina and stuff, and work him in a little bit slowly. But the guy's ready to go. He's like I said before the show. He's like a caged tiger that's getting the gate open. So he's ready to go.
Yeah, and it also allows them the benefit now that we have the DH that they don't need to, run him out every single day in right field for 9 innings. Like, you can say, hey, we're going to let you play a day and then we'll DH you a day, or we'll let you play 2 days and then DH you a day, just to get him off his feet a little bit that way, but still get his bat in the lineup. Because like you said, he's looked, through the rehab game he had today, and even some of the videos that come out of just hitting in the cage or just in general, like, he looks really healthy, and looks like he can still be an impact bat for you right now. You don't have to worry about the knee. It doesn't look like he's favoring it at all. Like, he looks 100%. It's just building up the legs to withstand an outfield, 9 innings every single day. I don't think he's quite there yet, but they can use the DH. So that homestand, like you mentioned, a lot of people thought it was going to be a 2 to 3 week rehab assignment, first week of May or so, but it does look and sound like he could be back, on Friday or the second half of the homestand. So it's really good for the game of baseball to get Ronald Acuna back, because, like you said, he's one of the most electric players to watch, and it's a big bat for that Braves lineup. They went on the run, and I think people just forgot, like, hey, they don't have Ronald Acuna Jr., and they just won the World Series, and they're going to get him back this year. So that's just scary for a team who didn't have him last year. They basically improved their bullpen, and now they're going to get one of the top, 5 to 10 players in baseball back in their lineup every single day. That makes a scary sight for teams. So hope Ronald comes back pretty healthy, and then hits the ground running here when he gets back. But let's jump on to some actual injury news in the majors of players getting placed on the IL, and we'll go ahead and start in Toronto with Hyun-Jin Ryu being placed on the IL with left forearm inflammation. Sounds like he might miss 2 to 3 starts.
Yeah, I'm not super surprised about this. Ryu's really struggled to start the year. He's got a 13 ERA in his first 2 starts, which obviously small sample size, but definitely possible that something might have been nagging him a little bit there. Hopefully it's just the 2 to 3 starts, but this is a guy who's been pretty often injured in the past. So, hopefully he comes back after just missing a start or 2 and is ready to go. But definitely a hurt to the Toronto rotation, but they do have a pretty deep rotation, so I don't think it's the end of the world for them right now.
Yeah, I was actually watching a good bit of the game in which he got injured. I believe it was against Texas, and he actually looked really good for the first, I think it was 2 or 3 innings, and then it just kind of seemed like everything just hit him at once, and everything just kind of lost its bite. So I wonder if it's something that just crept up there, or if it's something that he's actually been dealing with. But he's dealt with left forearm inflammation or left forearm issues in the past. Even missed a full season because of it. So it's something that's crept up on him for a while. So hopefully it's not a big deal and he's able to come back pretty soon. But did mention that Toronto rotation is pretty deep, so they can handle the loss of Ryu for a little bit. But a team that usually or won't be able to really withstand a loss of one of their top rotation arms, and that's the Tigers. They ended up losing Casey Mize to a right elbow strain. Don't know the severity of that one just yet, but it's a pretty big issue, as John Means from the Orioles has a left elbow sprain, and they're talking that he could not pitch for the rest of the season. So we're looking at, could be a couple starts, could be a long-term thing with Mize. But then the Tigers also placed Javi Baez on the IL with right thumb soreness.
Yeah, that's a bummer. I'm as somebody that went to Auburn and I was there when Mize was in school. I used to go out and watch him every Friday night in college, and I've always been a huge fan of his. And it sucks to see him get hurt. He did deal with that injury while he was in college once for missed several weeks. So that surprised me a ton. There was some talk about him mechanically when he came up to the big leagues. A few teams were a little bit worried about him, or when he was drafted, a few teams were a little bit worried about him mechanically and causing some injury issues with that elbow. So that's a bummer to see him get hurt, but hopefully it's a short-term thing. I hope he doesn't need Tommy John. He's been a little inconsistent since he got up to the big leagues, and he just needed but he was good enough to keep staying in that rotation and getting experience, getting innings. And that's really what he needs is just innings in the big leagues. Keep working on it, and it sucks that he has to go down for a while with that right elbow injury. It's not good. So hopefully there's no structural issues and he can come back soon, but we'll see. So
Yeah, and then it's also a big loss getting Javi Baez, just one of their bigger free agent uh, deals of this offseason, getting him in there. And while he's not the most impactful bat, just having that energy on the field for a younger team was good for them. And hopefully that's not a big issue. It doesn't sound like it is. Doesn't sound like there's structural damage within the thumb or whatever. I think he just bruised a bone or something that way. But when we get more information on that one, we'll let you guys know. So we'll move on to the next one. But Jose Altuve, he got a left hamstring strain yesterday. They're going to take it day by day, but it sounds like it might be an IL situation here in the next couple days. But with having the ability to backdate it, they're going to give it a couple days and see if he can bounce back sooner than what they expect.
yeah, I mean this isn't anything super new for Altuve. He's dealt with some small injuries like this throughout his career. In fact, he hasn't played 150 games since 2017. So he seems to deal with one of these nagging injuries like this for a couple weeks out of the year every year. It just so happens that this year it's early, and hopefully it's not a long-term thing. And maybe he can't avoid the IL, but with the hamstring strain, I would assume he probably does go on, and it's a close to minimum stay on it. But we'll see what happens. Hopefully he comes back and healthy soon. So.
Well, let's go ahead and pivot away from the injury news. It's been super negative so far to start with, but let's go to a feel-good story, and that's with Hunter Greene. Got his second career start this week, and he did it in Los Angeles, where he's from, and actually ended up breaking a Major League Baseball record for the most 100 mile an hour or faster pitches in a game. The previous record was from Jacob deGrom at 33. Hunter Greene set the new record at 39, and he did it in 5 1/3 innings.
Yeah, I mean, we knew this was coming because Hunter Greene, ever since he was in high school, ready for the draft, everyone knew this guy throws absolute heat and, famous for having thrown 100, 203 in high school and coming up through the minors. His velocity hasn't dipped, and here he is in the big leagues doing it again. So, not a surprise. It really is phenomenal what he's done, what his talent level is. Hopefully, it'll be interesting to see, and unfortunately, how he holds up physically, because we've seen that wear and tear from throwing that hard on a lot of guys really wear on him. Like you mentioned, Jacob deGrom is one of the previous record holder, and he's dealt with so many injuries the last couple of years. So hopefully Hunter Greene can stay healthy, and he might just be a unicorn that can do this and not get injured. He might just be that guy. Um, but this is really the upper limit of what a person can handle. And but
Yeah.
man, what a talent this guy is! I know that he, and that fastball could be a little flat. He got tagged for some home runs, I know, but he's such a talent. He's gonna be, if he can keep working on that fastball, the shape of it just a little bit, he could be insanely good. So definitely just a phenomenal talent.
It was really electric to watch. He did it against the Dodgers, so I was watching the game basically from the first pitch, and every time that he was up on the mound, I wanted to make sure I was paying attention to the game and see what he could do. Um, it was really, really fun, and he threw a couple good breaking balls in there. So like you said, the fastball was a little flat, so it did get tagged a little bit, but if he can work on being able to keep them off of that just a little bit, develop the breaking pitches a little bit more, maybe even a changeup in there, just help people get off the sniff of that fastball. He's gonna go on to do bright things, and he's still so young. We saw DeGrom, continue to get velocity later on and become better as you harness that and you learn how to use your velocity on your other pitches as well. So if Greene can, kind of mold himself into learning how to get that velocity quicker than DeGrom did, he's gonna be a stud for a long, long time. But let's move on to the next one, and it's something that we had known or we knew was coming because it was announced within the CBA that teams were going to now be allowed to have uniform patches or sell an area of the uniform for patches starting in 2023. And we got our first announcement today of a team getting their first sponsor, and that was with the San Diego Padres, agreeing with Motorola to be the smartphone technology place of the Padres, and that's going to start in 2023 with a right sleeve patch.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Honestly, this kind of went over my head that they had agreed to this. Sometimes hopefully it stays just to a really small sleeve patch or something because, I know that, they got this in the NBA now and you barely even notice it. But and I don't think you would really notice it that much on a sleeve patch. But I don't want it to be like soccer where you've got like the entire uniform is just sponsors. So, it's something that I like, the classic look of baseball and the teams having their iconic uniforms. And I don't especially love it, but I mean, I know that these teams want as much money as they can get, and if it's something small and out of the way, then it's it's not that big of a deal. But definitely not my favorite thing to hear today. So
yeah, and I don't know if you've seen the pictures of it. It is massive. Like
yeah, I've seen it.
It is a big logo there.
Yeah,
So I don't know if it's like all teams have to do it on the right sleeve or if it's like each team can do their own thing. But hopefully it's not like, hey, this is how big it has to be, because that was it takes up almost the whole sleeve. Like, it was pretty big. And the Padres missed a prime opportunity to have UPS sponsor them since they already look like them anyways. They missed the prime opportunity for that one. But let's go ahead and move on to our next scenario, or our next story, sorry. And that's with Jake Arrieta calling it a career.
Yeah, Jake Arrieta is such an interesting career. His big league career only lasted, 12 years, which that's a long time. But for a guy who had the peak that he had and didn't deal with injuries, it's interesting. Um, Obviously, the story is well known. He started with the Orioles, was really, really, really rough with them. Then the Cubs, traded for him, got him for really not much, and he figured it out when he got to Chicago. They helped him out, and he figured it out, and he was 2015 was one of the best seasons the Cubs have ever had from a pitcher. Won the Cy Young Award. He continued to be a pretty good pitcher for them, not as elite as he was in 2015, but he continued to be a pretty good pitcher for them until he signed with the Phillies, where it was an absolute disaster. 2021, he started off with back in Chicago, wasn't it? And then he really struggled with the Padres because they had a bunch of rotation injuries. It was even worse there, and he just didn't have it anymore. But definitely congrats to Jake Arrieta on a really good career. Those years with the Cubs really helped them to that World Series that they won, and I think a lot of Cubs fans will never forget that. The fact that he how good he was for that 2 or 3 year stretch in the mid 2010s. So congrats to him on just a great career.
Yeah, especially the back half of that 2015 season. I remember it because he threw the no-hitter against LA, and LA was like one of the big kickoffs to it. And then down the stretch, it was like a 3-horse Cy Young race between Zach Greinke, Kershaw, and Arrieta. And I remember being so mad because I was like, Greinke absolutely should win this. And then, like, you see once the season finished and you go look at it and you're like, oh, Arrieta just had like the greatest second half of all time. Like his second half ERA was like a .75, like a 148 batting average against, a 204 on base, and a 205 slugging. Like he gave up his slugging percentage against was like .001 higher than his on base in the second half. Like he was just unbelievable. The sinker to the slider to everything he was doing that second half of 2015 and then into 2016 where he had, a really good season that year as well with a 3.10 ERA, helped lead them to the World Series, him and John Lester. Really good career. Like you mentioned, once he got to Chicago, he really took off there. And then the decline, you kind of started seeing it that last year, and then he went to Philadelphia and it just went off the train tracks there. But really good year, or really good career for Jake Arrieta, and one that will be, was pretty fun to watch when he was out there and on. He was pretty fun. Another guy that decided to announce his retirement that we wanted to mention as well, not as big of a story as Jake Arrieta, but that's Tony Watson. Long time, just kind of middle reliever, never really took over a closer's role. I believe he only had like 32 career saves, but a guy who had 246 career holds throughout his career, 200 or 2.9 ERA on his career. Just one of the most steady left-handed relievers that you could count on to come in and get high leverage outs for quite a while.
Yeah, I mean, Tony Watson's a guy who had a couple of insanely good years. 2015 or 2014, he had a 163 ERA in 77 innings. I mean, that is like elite level relief work, and his peripherals didn't match up 163, but they were good too. 2015 was almost as good. Over the last, he had, as any reliever that's not some like super like Hall of Fame level reliever has, every reliever has a little bit of variation. He had a couple of years of that. He had a couple of years of, mid threes ERA, and he had a couple of years of 4+ ERA. But you look at this last year, I'm a little surprised he retired, because last year, after getting traded back to the Giants, where he spent the first half of last year in LA with the Angels, and after getting traded back to the Giants, he was actually really good down the stretch for them. In 24 innings, had a 2.96 ERA. So I'm a little bit surprised that nobody really signed him, and he retired, because I mean, his ERA projection this year from some of the projection systems was in the mid threes. So I mean, there's a lot of teams that could use that, but obviously he didn't really want to take a non-guaranteed deal or something, and he's 37 years old. So he decided to call it quits. But a good career for Tony Watson. Really solid reliever. Probably hurt a little bit by the 3-batter rule too, as he's always been a guy that they counted on to get lefties out. So that 3-batter rule this is the type of guy that hurts. But solid pitcher, did a good job, had a good career. So,
and is it time to really start dunking on Rob Manfred again for these stupid rules already?
So yeah, I mean, I guess
we gave him like a 3-episode break. Like we can get back to it, right?
Yeah. Well, we can. Let's just leave it, because next year we're going to be talking about it about every day. How bad the rules are going to be, but
oh god, don't even get me started.
Yeah, we're gonna need to appreciate the rules that we have this year.
Oh, I know. Passon dropped something today about the pitch clock, and I just didn't even want to read it already.
Yeah.
So, let's go ahead and jump over now, and we wanted to do a thing where we're gonna each pick a couple teams that we feel started really well, and then a couple teams that we each felt could be better, or worse than what we kind of expected to start the season off. I'll go ahead and start with my first one, and then we'll jump to you for your first one, and we'll go back and forth that way. The first team that I think it's not, I don't know if it's really a surprise, but it's that I think a lot of people expected them to stumble early on, and that was the Mets. Just because, like, hey, they weren't having Jacob deGrom. Like, we didn't know what kind of Max Scherzer we were going to get because he was dealing with the hamstring issue. Like, Carrasco he was struggled at times last year and then looked really good at other times. Taijuan Walker has already kind of been banged up as it is, so we didn't know what their starting rotation was going to look like. And then there was the question marks of, like, is Lindor going to bounce back? Like, how's Marte and how's Canna and Eduardo Escobar going to fill in? And all those guys have filled in really well. The rotation's been really good, led by Tyler McGill. In his first 2 starts, I believe he went like 10 innings, didn't give up any any runs. He got lit up for 4 in the first 2 innings today and then settled in and had a really strong second half of that outing. Max Scherzer's looked pretty good, like Max Scherzer has. Carrasco's looked insane his first couple starts compared to last year. And overall, I just think the Mets have, they've got off to a hotter start than most of us expected right away, just because of the question marks kind of coming in around the rotation and how those guys were going to kind of fit in there.
Yeah, the Mets, they are off to a great start. I mean, the competition they've played so far, they've gotten the Diamondbacks and the Nationals already. So, and as along with the Phillies, so they haven't played the best competition yet till now. I mean, the Giants are pretty good, so impressive for them to win that game today, and it looks like they're winning game 2 today as well. But definitely a good start for the Mets. The first team I was going to pick was how about the Oakland A's? I mean, everyone talked about how horrible they were going to be and how they were going to lose 120 games and all this stuff, which they probably still will. But to start the season, they haven't been all that bad. They're 5-5, I believe. They won a series against the Rays, which was pretty impressive. They've had some pretty good contributions from Elvis Andrews. Shockingly, his plate discipline numbers have been great. Tony Kemp's been pretty good. Sean Murphy's had a good start. They needed that bad. And then I think Christian Pache's done some good things for them so far. So that's a really nice thing for them to see, because that's a guy who they need Christian Pache and part of that return to be really good. So. And then you look at their pitching, and obviously Frankie Montas, no surprise, he's been really solid. But Paul Blackburn's had a really good start. His first couple starts have been really good. So, obviously it's early, and it's the first week of the season, and none of this really matters that much anyways. But, a pretty good start for the A's. Some of their guys that, they needed to step up to have a somewhat competitive team have stepped up a lot. So, we'll see what happens going forward. They're not going to be good. I'm not changing my prediction of them losing a ton of games, but they have had a pretty good start. So just a little bit of a feel-good story for them to start the year.
Yeah, and they've played like most of the time you would be able to see like, hey, if a team's playing hard or they're not. Like they've actually played really hard. They played the Phillies tough. They played the Toronto, the Blue Jays really tough. I think they even snuck, I believe, 2 games out of that one. I could be wrong, but they've played people really tough. And for a team that you had saw people, a lot of that, they've had this lot of roster turnover already, trading Matt Olsen, trading Matt Chapman, trading Sean Manaya, the rumors around Frankie Montas. They're a team that's already coming out and playing hard. And that's really good to see because, we thought they were just going to be one of the rollover teams so far, but still expect them to lose a lot of games. But it is encouraging to see the fight that they've had so far to start the year. But the next team that I wanted to talk about was the Colorado Rockies. I think they've really surprised a lot of people with the amount of offense that they've had. Now they have played a lot in Coors so far, so that does help. But right now they're leading baseball in OPS in OPS. They're leading baseball in average. They are top 5 in on base percentage, and they are top of the board of slugging. So I mean that a little does help with Coors Field and the air there, but guys like Connor Joe's looked really good. Bryant's looked really good. Grichuk's been pretty good for them as well. We talked about them signing Freeland. They signed McMahon. He's looked pretty decent. I think he hit his first home run just yesterday, or maybe that was on Sunday. But they've really overperformed what people thought. I mean, they are, they're what are they? They're 7-3, second in the division right now, still tied with San Francisco. But I think a lot of people expected them. They took the opening series against the Dodgers. They beat them 2 out of 3 there. I believe they split the series with the Cubs. I think it was a 4 game, and they split that. And I think they've beat the Phillies the first 2 games of that series. So it's they've been pretty fun to watch offensively. The pitching's been good enough to hold them around, and it'll be interesting to see how that goes through a full season.
Yeah, that's that is a good start for them. I mean, obviously, like you say, the pitching's a big deal, and I really think their bullpen's going to be the bigger deal on the pitching end, because I honestly think their starting pitching is okay. I think that bullpen's going to be their downfall. they just don't have a lot of pieces there. And even though their rotation for a Colorado rotation is not bad, but the next team I was going to pick, how about the Cubs start? I still don't think the Cubs are all that good, but I wanted to talk about them. Seiya Suzuki has really carried this team so far. Already put up a full win above replacement. Has been extremely good with his plate discipline and walking a lot. He's also hit for power. He's shown the ability to hit to all fields. He actually looks like the real deal. I was obviously a skeptic of him, but so far he's proven me wrong. I'll definitely willing to admit that because he's been really solid. And their offense in general has been pretty good. Wilson Contreras has had a good start to the season. He's been solid. Uh, and Jonathan VR has been pretty good. Ian Happ has had a pretty good start. And some of these guys like Contreras and Happ have been inconsistent players who can be really good, but aren't always really good. But they've been solid so far this year. Pitching wise, they've had some good contributions from a couple guys. Keegan Thompson has pitched extremely well. He's actually been relieving, but he's already pitched almost 10 innings. He hasn't given up a run yet, which is really nice. Drew Smiley's been pretty solid for them, surprisingly. He's put up a pretty good number so far, but we'll see what happens to this team going forward. I still don't believe in their pitching at all. I think their bullpen is pretty bad. Their starting rotation is just horrible, and I don't think their lineup is deep enough. I don't think, obviously, Suzuki's not going to keep up this pace. He might keep up a really good pace the way he's looked, but I don't think Jonathan VR is going to keep hitting for a 192 WRC plus. I don't think Patrick Wisdom is going to be a league average hitter. Jan Gomes has had a pretty good start. I mean, I truly don't think that these guys are going to be as good as they've been so far. So, but it's a good start for them, and it's I know that they'll they might be a little bit better than we expected them to be.
Yeah, the Fighting Seiya Suzuki's have been pretty interesting to watch the first couple weeks of the season. You're talking about looking at average. We were talking about the Rockies leading it. The Cubs are second in baseball in average right now. They are second in on-base percentage. They are third in slugging percentage, and they are what is that? And they're right near the top of OPS as well. So, like, the offense has been really good. The pitching, Stroman's looked decent. Hendricks has had a couple good starts and he had a couple good starts and then an iffy start. Justin Steele has looked really good for them as well.
Yeah, Justin Steele get lit up tonight, though.
Well, we're recording.
We're recording as it goes. I got you, but I saw him on there and I was like, "Hey, he's pretty good." And then I looked at what's going on right now, and I'm like, "Oh, maybe not."
Yeah, what has he done tonight? Where's
it's
this
just
at?
two and 2/3 innings, 4 earned runs. I mean, not anything earth shatteringly bad, but compared to the 193 ERA he started the night with, it's 450 now. But
yeah, they've put Jesse Chavez in the game, so it's over now. But
that's world champion Jesse Chavez to you.
That's 7.73 ERA this season so far, Jesse Chavez.
Yeah, okay.
So we'll let that one stand. But you said Seiya's been incredible. Like, to start the season, he probably comes back down to earth some. They have had guys like VR who he's not starting every day, but he's had a good start to the season. Nick Madrigal's really struggled to begin with. He's hit a lot of balls, for him hard, but he's just hit them right at people. Those will start going through a little bit more. He'll get a little bit more of those flare shots to dunk out in the outfield. So they're going to be a little bit worse. They're not going to be a top 5 offensive team, but I think they might be better than offensively, at least than most people thought they'd be. I think a lot of the stuff we've seen, you can count on happening for them. A lot of it, I think it'll be more consistent than people realize. The rotation, it's going to be question marks once you get outside of Hendricks and Stroman. And the bullpen, they do have some nice pieces. David Robertson's looked really nice so far. Givens has looked pretty good. But they do have guys like Jesse Chavez who are not looked great. So, they're a team that I feel can fight for a 500 record and maybe a little bit below. 500 being if things hit right. But as long as they have Seiya Suzuki, they're going to win every single game in my eyes because he's been amazing. And I'm going to be a big supporter, and you're going to hear me brag about him a lot on this one. But let's go ahead and move over to a couple teams that we think should have maybe started better or just have disappointed us to begin with. And I'll go ahead and go first, and that's with the Texas Rangers. They were the big spenders of the offseason, getting Corey Seager, getting Marcus Semien, getting John Gray. I don't think any of us really expected them to be a playoff team. But I think they've just underwhelmed. Semien's really struggled to start the season. Believe they just got John Gray off the IL today for the start. Seager's looked really well. Joe Madden thinks he was Barry Bonds and intentionally walked him with the bases loaded on Thursday, which was hilarious watching Mike Trout's reaction from the outfield to him realizing the bases were loaded and then walking Seager. But overall, Texas has just disappointed so far. I think we expected them to be pretty bad pitching, but I think we expected better offensive numbers, and we just haven't got it yet.
Yeah, I mean, it hurts them that Simeon's been so bad, but we kind of talked about how they needed a lot to go right in that lineup outside of those two for it to have any depth to it. Because I mean, this is a team that was so barren, and then they signed two players that were really good. But we'll see. If I'm not mistaken, Simeon actually started slow for the first week last year, and then he almost won MVP. So maybe he'll turn it around and get John Gray back. Helps them because, like you said, that pitching rotation has been horrible, and that he's really their only established starter that they have. So getting him back is going to help some, but they're not a 2-7 team, going forward, but they're probably a below 500 team right now as it is. But yeah, so my first team I wanted to talk about is my team, the Braves. They've been really rough so far. They they've played a pretty easy schedule for the first week, and they were the only two victims of the Cincinnati Reds on the season so far. In the opening series, they split a 4-game series with the Reds, and they dropped a series at home to the Nationals. I mean, that you cannot let that happen if you're going to repeat and win the division for the 5th straight year. It's one of those things that this division's so tight that you have to take advantage of games against the Nationals and the teams that are not very good, and the Braves haven't done that so far. So now you end up you're going to put yourself in a big hole because now you play in the Padres and the Dodgers for 7 games, which they split the series with the Padres, but playing the Dodgers is they've already lost the first game of that one. So Braves have been interesting. They've had some bad luck on balls in play so far. Only a 279 BABIP, which is really low. But they've had a real top heavy lineup. Olsen, Riley, Albies, Ozuna have all been really, really, really good. But beyond that, it's been not good. Dansby Swanson's been one of the worst hitters in baseball so far. He's striking out 43% of the time, which is just pathetic. Eddie Rosario has been awful as well. So they really need Ronald Acuna back, and as we talked about earlier, that's coming. The pitching rotation has been inconsistent. It's kind of funny. Kyle Wright has looked like the best pitcher on the team, and one of the best pitchers all around so far, which is kind of crazy. But had some bad luck on the mound too. Max Fried has had some bad luck so far. A 2.01 FIP, a 5.73 ERA in his first couple starts. But you kind of look at they've been walking a ton of guys. The 9% team walk rate. They need to work on that and improve that number. But I think they'll be okay. But like I said, when you're in a division as tough as this division is, with 3 legit contenders and 1 fringe contender here, you gotta find a way to you got to find a way to win those games, take advantage of games when you're playing against poor competition like they were the first week. And starting off 5-7 is not very good. So they need to get better.
And they will. Like you said, the pitching has kind of struggled to begin with. You're going to get Acuna back, so that's gonna help a bunch. You're going to get the rotation's going to come around. Like Max Fried's going to be the Max Fried we expect. Morton will be pretty consistent. Like the Braves will turn it around easy. They have the bullpen, they have the offensive pieces. It's just about finding their lane and getting it clicking. But the second team I wanted to talk about that has been really struggling so far, and you mentioned them there, and that's the Cincinnati Reds. They won 2 of the 3 against the Braves to start with, and then they've lost everything since. I actually went to the game on Thursday where they were playing against LA. It was Jackie Robinson Day, and it was just awful to watch. The Dodgers ended up sweeping them on the series. It doesn't help that they lost Jonathan India the first game. Or sorry, I went on Friday. That they lost Jonathan India on Thursday. With the hamstring strain as well, and then I believe even Moustakas got injured. I believe it was Sunday that he had came out, or maybe it was yesterday. But their offense is just horrid. Like they do not even look competitive up there at the plate right now. Just they have no idea what's going on. Like their pitching, like we talked about Hunter Greene, he was good for a while, and then he's going through his rookie. The rookie bumps. You had Tyler Mahle, who looked really good in his first start, looked really good for the first couple innings against Los Angeles, and then I think he gave up like 6 or 7 in the one inning, and they just kind of like left him out there to take it on Sunday. So they've just been so bad, and I knew they were going to be bad when they were trading everybody away, but I didn't think it would be the level of what we're seeing right now. Like I thought they'd be at least somewhat competitive, and then watching the first series against the Braves, I was like, man, they might be better than what I thought, and then now they're just like, this is worse than what I thought they were going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been a struggle for the Reds, and they it doesn't help that they have injuries. I mean, Luis Castillo not being there. I mean, their number 2 pitcher so far has been like Vladimir Gutierrez. I mean, it's you're not going to do very well when that's going on. But my next team, that's disappointed has been the Phillies. The Phillies are a team that a lot of people were high on, and I kind of said that I thought the defense was going to be a problem, and well, the defense has been a problem, and it's been really, really, really rough as a team. They're already negative defensive value. Um, they it's this team is just. I mean, Alec Boehm made 3 errors in an inning the other day, or two innings or whatever it was. Um, and they've been awful defensively. If you look at their pitchers, their ERA is a full point higher than their FIP, which typically means bad luck or bad defense behind them. So that's been a problem for them. They've gotten really rough starts from Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler, which has been bad for them. Kyle Gibson's actually been their best pitcher so far. Um, and then you look at their lineup, and this is the surprising thing. We're expecting them to have some super good lineup and everything, but and some of them are better than they've played so far, and they'll get going. But Kyle Schwarber has a 42 WRC plus so far. Bryson Stott, who they brought up to play, be an everyday player as a rookie, has had a rough start. He's got a -7 WRC plus. And then guys like Didi Gregorius and has struggled a little bit. Bryce Harper's been okay. He hasn't been normal Bryce Harper, but he's been pretty decent. And they have had some. He has had some low BABIP luck, but this team's just not been good so far. They've had a really rough start. They're playing in Colorado too right now, so I believe last night they got shut out in Colorado. Actually, if I'm not mistaken, I might have, unless I missed them score at the end or something. But they got beat 4-1. They scored in the 8th inning, got beat 4-1 in Colorado last night. So they've really struggled to start the season, and we'll see what happens with them going forward. They're not going to be this bad defensively, but they have to pick it up, or offensively. I mean, they're going to have to pick it up. The pitchers are going to have to pitch better because at a certain point, if your pitchers are giving up a lot of hard hit balls and your defense is bad, that's a recipe for disaster. So we'll see what happens there, but definitely an interesting team to look at. They really need their guys to get going, though.
Yeah, the offensive woes can't happen if you know your team's going to be so bad defensively, and your whole game plan coming into the year was we're just going to score a ton of runs to help try and make up for that. And Schwarber's been, really bad to start the season. He'll go on a hot streak at some point. Harper will go on a hot streak. Like Castellanos, like when they go onto a hot streak, they're going to score like 8 runs a game, and it's going to be fun to watch. But then you're going to have stretches of time where you're going to get this type of production from them. Um, and then when that slumps, the defense is going to slump because they're just focusing on what they can do for the hitting side. So, it is a lot worse than what we expected, but it will turn around eventually. Like they just got to get it going, and they will with the track records of the names in that lineup. So look at that. But let's go ahead and jump over to the players of the week segment that usually will wrap up our shows on throughout the season. And for this week, we're going to basically take from the beginning of the season through last night's stats. But who do you got for your hitter so far?
So my hitter so far, I know it sounds like homerism, but it's not because he has the highest WAR in baseball so far, and it's Matt Olsen. In his first 12 games as a Brave, he's hit 452 with a 566 on base and a 714 slugging percentage. Put up over one above replacement already. And the thing that stands out to me with Matt Olsen is the plate discipline is so good. He's walking over 20% of the time right now. And if you watch him, he's taking a lot of close pitches and taking them for balls, and it's been really really fun to watch that. Hit a couple of home runs. He's hit the ball really hard. He's actually gotten unlucky on some balls he's hit, but definitely a great start for him to his Braves tenure. And we'll see if he's able to keep it going. He's really carried the Braves offense so far with it. He's been, and obviously he's carried the National League because he's got the highest WAR. But we'll see. Hopefully he can keep that up going forward.
Yeah, we knew Olsen was going to be really good when he got there, and he's living up to the hype. And the plate discipline has been really, really good to see from him so far. My player, I wanted to go with Seiya. We talked a lot about him so far. So I didn't pick him, but I do want to mention him with the 4 homers, 11 RBIs, the plate discipline, walking 23% of the time. Now striking out 23% of the time still, but 429 average or 564 on base, 929 slugging. Like he's 0.1 off being one of the major league leaders with WAR, behind Matt Olsen with a full win already. So wanted to mention him, but the player I ended up going with was Owen Miller. Not many people will know that name, but he actually came to the Cleveland Guardians as a part of the Mike Clevenger trade. The big name being Josh Naylor in that one with Cal Quantrill, Gabriel Arias, and then Miller at the time was like the 4th rated player in that trade. And so far to start off the season, he's batted 500 with a 544 or 545 on base with a 964 slugging, 0.9 on his WAR so far. He's hit a couple homers, nine runs, 7 RBIs, 15% strikeout rate, 12% walk rate. Like it's been really fun to watch Owen Miller so far. Guy will not keep up a pace anywhere near this, and probably won't even be an everyday starter, as I think they called up. They ended up calling up Gabriel Arias for tomorrow's doubleheader. So a guy who might not even be starting much longer, but he's been one of the best players offensively in baseball so far. So I wanted to give him his nod because I don't think many people will know the name, and I don't know how much we're going to hear about it going forward.
Yeah, so definitely a good call there. He's been really solid for them, and if he keeps playing like that, then Gabriel Arias is not going to take his place.
Yeah.
But anyways, but yeah, the guy I wanted to pick for my pitcher was Sean Manaya. There were a few good options there, but Sean Manaya is a guy who got traded like the week before the season and went to San Diego and immediately came in and made a first impression by almost throwing a no-hitter, getting pulled during a no-hitter, and which was incredible. His first start for the Padres, and since then he's still been really good. One of the things that's been rough for him in the past has been the home run ball. It's kind of held him back some, but so far this year, not a lot of home runs. He's cut that by, and obviously home runs are something that's very, it's a very volatile stat. So small sample size is a gigantic part of that. But his first three starts, 142 ERA, 257 FIP. He's been really solid. 19 innings in those three starts, so he's averaging 6 innings a start. I think he leads the majors in innings pitched, if I'm not mistaken, so far. And that's something that they really need from him is to throw a lot of innings, especially the rotation that's already got some injuries with Clevenger still being out. And they traded away Chris Paddock, and they definitely are counting on this guy to give them some really good innings. Snell's injured. They're counting on him, and he's delivered so far. We'll see if he's able to continue delivering as we go forward through the rest of the season.
Yeah, Manaya is a guy I think will be pretty good for them. He's really good in Oakland, and then now in San Diego. I think getting him into a place where they'll be consistently in the playoff run and a lot more is expected. Also playing for Bob Melvin still. He knows what to expect, and he knows when he can push Manaya and when not to. So I look for him to keep doing really good things and playing in the NL West where lefty pitchers are, they usually are pretty good with three really hitter friendly ballparks there. But the pitcher I wanted to go with this week, and I'm going to jump on where you did offensively, go homerism. I'm going to do that on the pitcher side, and I'm going to go with Andrew Heaney. I mentioned him last week a little bit as he was pitching while we were podcasting, and he backed it up with another really good start against the Reds this week. Now, his first two starts have come against the Twins and the Reds, so take it all with a grain of salt. But in 10 innings so far, he has a 13.94 Ks per nine, which that won't stay there, but he hasn't allowed a run. And I think on his new slider or whatever it is, he's got 23 whiffs so far in the 10 and a third innings he's pitched. Just looked really good. A 45% ground ball rate, 0 home runs given up, like with 0 runs, but a 1.16 FIP. So he's still been pitching really well. Tons of strikeouts. Like the slider has looked really good. For a guy who doesn't have an overpowering fastball his right now his average velocity is 91.7. To get the amount of Ks that he's getting on the slider, and even quite a few have come off the fastball as well, just getting people off that slider. It's been really, really fun to watch. And I hope that he is able to at least continue somewhat of this pace and not get back to the guy who got DFA'd last year by the Yankees. And makes me look like a fool, and that I have to buy his jersey when he wins the Cy Young this year.
Yeah, he's been really good. They actually wrote an article on Fangraphs today. I think it's Jay Jaff about his slider that you're talking about. So, definitely a guy who has had some really good peripheral stats in the past, and some of the advanced metrics on his stuff have looked really good. He's been able to miss some bats in the past. And, the Dodgers felt like they could hone that in a little bit. We'll see if he's able to keep it going, or if teams are maybe a little surprised by the difference and figure him out. But it'll definitely be interesting to see going forward. But maybe the Dodgers might have found another pitcher there that'll do well. So,
yeah, and even if they can get him to a 3.5, 4 ERA guy, I think they'll take that all day long.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
But I think that's gonna wrap it up for this show. Unless you got anything else.
I don't think so. Just looking forward to, a lot of baseball to be played. We've only got 2 weeks down. And you got to remember these games. I was talking about with the Braves. These games are important early in the season because, obviously it's not the end all be all, but these games count the same as the games in the last week. And you want to get off to a good start. You want to take advantage of playing teams that aren't going to be very good this year. You're going to want to compete. If you're playing big, you can be playing big division games this year, and at the end of the day, if you lose the division or win the division by 1 game, make the playoffs, miss the playoffs by 1 game, that game could have been that game on opening day that you blew. It counts the same. So, obviously momentum's a big deal, and peaking at the right time's a big deal and all, but definitely you want to see, these games are all important, just as the games late are important. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully we see fewer injuries happening than what happened this week, but I'm excited to see what happens going forward.
Yeah, we got some big series coming up as well. You mentioned the Braves and Dodgers one right now. Then the Dodgers go play San Diego this weekend, so that's going to be a really fun one. That series is always pretty intense, and then some other bigger ones around this throughout this weekend. So it's going to be really fun to watch throughout the week because high intensity games. And you mentioned like the games. A lot of people think about the games later on in the season; they matter more. It's just when the race is tightened up. Like you could not have as close of a race if you perform better early in the season. And these games where you say they don't matter as much. I think that's one thing that's always irritated me is people are like, oh, well, it's just the first couple weeks. Like this doesn't matter. Da, 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 da. And I'm like, they do matter. Like, if you lose a game or if you lose the division by one game and you've mailed in a game earlier this year, and you were just like, oh, it doesn't really matter. And then you lost that. It's like, that would be kind of frustrating. And in the long haul, they matter more. The same, every game matters. So, but I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Bat Flip podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys next week.
Thanks, everybody.